Well, what's up guys, this is Daniel from Arms Family Homestead, and I promised you guys I would do a video on my drip irrigation system and how to set up a drip irrigation system, because I truly believe that is one thing you can do to make your garden much more simple, and it'll just be a lot easier for you to maintain. But before we get started on that, I just want to let you guys know today's video is brought to you by Exmark Mowers, the makers of professional mowing equipment. So my high tunnel garden kind of got wiped out in February by that huge cold spell that swept across the country. I'm kind of embarrassed by how little I have growing in here right now. Going into April, I should have this thing full of plants, but we lost a lot of our late winter, early spring garden in here, and I don't have the outdoor garden tilled up just yet. So we're going to focus all of our work inside the high tunnel. Now, I've used drip irrigation for 5 or 6 years probably. I think I did a video on my drip irrigation system about 4 years ago, so it's time to update some of that and show you guys how I run a drip irrigation system. Now basically what a drip irrigation system is a low pressure watering system that will put water directly where it needs to be in the soil. I use T-tape, which is a drip tape, and I'll show you all of that in a little bit. So when it comes to gardening, in my opinion, there's two things that really make a lot of people struggle. The first one and the big one is weeds. People go out, plant a huge garden, and weeds take over. And the second is just time out there, and having to water by hand or something just takes a lot of time. So a lot of people resort to a sprinkler system. So when you use a sprinkler, I want you to think about it like this. You use a sprinkler, you're watering everything. I could put a sprinkler in here and water all of this real quickly and be done, but then I'm not just watering the plants that need it. I'm watering the grass and the weeds and everything else. A drip system is going to allow you to put a drip emitter right next to those plants, right where they need to be. So if you want a successful garden, you got to figure out ways to automate things and make them work on their own so that you can spend less time out here, because we're all busy. We all have busy lives. And one thing that I've used for many years is a digital timer for my irrigation system. This one thing right here saves me a huge amount of time, and it saves water, because it only takes once for you to forget to turn off your drip irrigation system or sprinkler or anything to cost you a lot of money. And with a drip system, it's very quiet and you don't notice that it's on. So unlike a sprinkler that's throwing water across your yard, you can see it and hear it and all of that, drip irrigation is easy to forget about. So I use a timer, so I can set it to come on whatever days I want it to irrigate at whatever time and for how long, and then it shuts off and the plants all take care of themselves pretty much. So getting started with drip irrigation is not difficult, but you may want to start off with a kit. There's a lot of kits that you can buy online. I think Haas Tools sells a really good kit. Irrigation Mart, Dripworks. You can even go on Amazon and buy garden irrigation kits and get you started. But once you kind of figure out the flow of the system and how it works, you really don't need to buy a kit every year. You can just replace that T-tape and go on about your day. So I'm going to show you a couple ways that I do things on my raised beds here in the high tunnel, but I'll also show you this same thing will work for a huge garden. You just take one big mainline tube and run your T-tape off of where your rows are going to be. So let's get started. So for me specifically, this is where my water comes into my garden, and we're going to tie into some lines that I buried several years ago when I built my raised beds. So we'll tie into that, and it all works the same, just like I said, for raised beds or your in-ground garden, whatever you've got. But for me personally, I came in and I buried lines that connect all of my raised beds in the high tunnel with PVC pipe, and raised them up and brought them into this black main line. So if you were doing an outside garden, this main line would run the full length of your garden, and then you'd put a T-tape, a drip emitter tape, on every row that you had. So if you had your row spaced out at 24 inches or 36 inches or whatever it is. So one that was outdoors would look more like this. So you've got this is kind of bent, this pipe's not straight right now, but just imagine this is the end of your garden, and that's say your garden's 30 feet wide. You'd have a 30-foot wide main line all the way down your garden, and then you come in, pop in your valves and run your drip tape off of that. So what are you doing out here? Earl, where'd you going? Where are you going, Earl? So we're going to start from our water source and work our way out. Now, depending on what type of water source you have, if you're on a well, or you're pumping water from a creek or a pond or something, you're definitely going to want an inline filter, because any sediment in your water will clog up the drip emitters on your T-tape really quickly. So I would highly recommend, unless you're on city water or rural water, a filter, just an inline filter. So that's going to go on. It will connect straight onto your hose spigot. Then, since drip irrigation is a low pressure system, you can't run just your standard garden water pressure that you would use on a regular garden hose in a drip system, because you'll blow up those lines. So you have to reduce that pressure. So this little piece right here is a pressure reducer, and it's going to reduce your pressure. This one is down to 12 psi. You can buy them more 10, 11, 12 psi. Anything in that range is going to work just fine, and that will connect straight onto your filter. Now, I'm not going to put mine here because I've already got a pressure reducer on this PVC line here. So from there, really all you would need, unless you want to run your garden timer, you could connect a water hose directly to those two and we'd be good to go. Now I'm going to put my timer on there, obviously, but the inline filter, if you're on, anything but filtered city water, rural water, you got to have that filter on there. Okay, so I've got my digital timer connected to my water source, connected to a water hose, going to my pressure reducer, and that's going to fill the system. Now, the next step, after I installed my PVC pipe and stuff, I bought some fittings to connect my PVC pipe, which is a glue-in fitting on this end and a compression fitting on this end, to my 1-inch main line. Now, at the end of that main line, you'll need a plug, and those just slide in. The plug looks like this, and it just slides into that main line tubing, and you put a hose clamp on there so you don't leak out this end. And remember, this is low pressure, so this stuff doesn't have to be glued together like high pressure PVC or water lines for your house or something. And then the next step is to put a drip valve in here, and there's a lot of different options when it comes to this piece right here. So I prefer one like this that just snaps in and has an actual valve on it. A lot of companies will sell you one like this that just pokes into your main line, your T-tape connects, but the problem there is then you can only control your water by your main water source. So you'd be watering every row at the same time. With one like this, you can turn on each individual bed or row. So if say you don't have anything, like I've got an empty bed here, and I didn't want to water this and waste water, I just turned each individual row off, but my strawberries would still need water over here, so leave those on. And if I just had this style in every tape, I'd have to water everything all at once. So since we're working on my existing system and not installing a new system, I already have all of my valves installed, and this is just a piece of pipe that I'm going to use for a demo because I feel like that's something I need to show you guys. So if you buy a kit or whether you buy it in pieces, you'll need a hole punch, and all this little tool does is poke a hole in this pipe just like this. I'll show you. It just pokes a perfect little hole in there for one of your drip valves, and you can see this valve has a rubber fitting here, so it just pops in just like that. And since this is a low pressure system, that 9, 10, 11, 12 pounds of pressure won't force that out, and it has a rubber seal around it. So if you put these in the wrong spot, you can just pop them out. And most companies sell what they call goof plugs that you could put in there, and you'd be able to reuse your main line if your row spacings change the next year. So these valves are getting pretty old. and they've been out in the sun for, I would say, probably 4 or 5 years. They're starting to get brittle and dry rotting. The little compression fitting doesn't like to hold up too many years, so I'm gonna go ahead and replace all these while we're at it. Just pop those out and pop new ones in. And like I said, these have lasted probably 4 or 5 years, I believe. All right, now we're ready for our T-tape. So when it comes to the actual T-tape, the drip emitter tape, there's about 1,000 different options. Now I'm using a tape that's got a 8-inch spacing, and that means there's basically one small tiny little drip emitter every 8 inches, and these are about 3 feet wide. These beds are about 3 feet wide, so that's why I've got 3 separate rows. So connecting your T-tape to your valve is really simple. It's got a compression fitting. You just twist that back, open up your T-tape, and this has a little shoulder on there, so you're going to push it on there past that shoulder, and then you just twist lock, and that will be 100% all you need to connect your T-tape to your fitting. So I bought a really big roll of this T-tape. This is like 4,000 feet. This will last me for several years, and this is something you want to replace every year. I kind of get away with 2 years sometimes being inside the high tunnel, but it definitely isn't meant to last forever because it'll clog up with minerals and calcium and things over time. Now once you reach the end of your row and you've cut your T-tape to length, you obviously are going to have to cap this off, otherwise all your water would just run out the end. And some companies sell this little clip right here that you would slide on to your T-tape, and then you just fold it over a couple times and slide that T-tape back up in this clip, and it makes a really good ending. But there's really no reason to buy those clips. You can do the same thing with a piece of your T-tape. So just take a couple inches. So just take a short piece like this, and what we're going to do is basically the same thing, and it's pretty simple. So you just kind of have to slide that little short piece over. You may have to kind of fold it up a little bit. Same thing, just fold it over once, fold it over a second time, and now we've got a little collar here. Now you have to work it into it, but this is going to save you some money, so it's worth it. You just slide that little collar over the folded end that you made, and that right there will seal off any water, just like the piece that you bought to do the same thing would do. I just prefer not to buy those. All right, as you can see, we've got our 3 rows of T-tape laid out on our raised bed. That'll spread water out evenly across the bed. So now all that's left is to pressurize the system, test it all out, and see how it works. So as you can see behind me, this entire row is ready to be planted. You can put already started crops in here. You can start seeds. You can dig a little furrow next to that drip tape, set your seeds in, cover it up, and then you're going to get water directly where it needs. Each one of those little drip emitters will water your plants and not the weeds. And in my opinion, watering your crops and not the weeds is going to be a huge time saver for you. Now, the next thing you're going to need to get and make sure you have on hand, because the inevitable thing is either a mouse, a rabbit, a squirrel, some kind of animal is going to come in here and chew a hole in that T-tape, and it's going to shoot out like a water gun and spray. and you can buy these little repair kits. These little things basically just have the same twist lock nut, and you cut the damaged section of that T-tape out, slide it down on both sides, and then twist lock it just like on the valve, and these will save you from having to replace however long your rows are. I mean, mine are 50 feet long. Your garden may have 30 feet rows or 60, 70, 80 foot rows, and that'll save you from having to replace that whole run of T-tape, because trust me, mice are going to chew through that. There's just nothing you can do about it. So I'm just going to repeat the process for all the rest of my raised beds, and then we'll have brand new irrigation system set up and be prepared for the next year or 2 years or whatever it is. And like I said, just remember, watering your plants much better than watering the weeds. If you're going to grow a garden, you're going to have weeds. There's just no doubt about it. But if you can limit the access that those weeds get to water and nutrients, they're just not going to grow. And using a sprinkler, in my opinion, is a great way to grow a lawn, but not a garden. Drip irrigation is the best and easiest thing I've found over the last 7-8 years of gardening to make the best use of my time. And I admit I don't spend near as much time gardening as I used to, but I still love those fresh grown vegetables and fresh grown strawberries and things. So I want to use my time as best I can, and a drip system like that on a digital timer, so I can set what time it comes on, what days it comes on, is going to save me time, and that's more time I can spend with my family doing whatever they want to do. Houston, you guys know, Houston loves to go to the creek and do all the fishing and stuff, and kids, the other two, are so busy with sports and basketball and track meets and softball and all that stuff. I can't always be out here to babysit the garden. So this drip irrigation system saves me a ton of time, and I believe money in the long run, versus using a sprinkler system. So anyways, that's all I've got for today, guys. Huge shout out to Exmark Mowers for hooking us up and being a great supporter of our channel. For more content like this, be sure to check out exmark.com/backyard. There's a lot of good gardening content. They've got stuff for grilling, all kinds of tips and how-tos for just everything in the backyard lifestyle. There's even some pond management stuff. I've been watching some guys on there that know a lot more about pond management than me. So go check them out, exmark.com/backyard. I'll leave a link in the description box. And I'm gonna get finished with my gardening and go take a shower and clean up, go do something else. So guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Y'all have a great day, and as always, we'll see you on the next video.